I'm loving you when I give to you. And of course, we're expecting reciprocity, but at the same time, we don't love where we get. That's why a man will never protect where he did not invest in. I am an aggressive investor. I am putting everything on her because as a man, I know how to protect because I know how to serve. And that's the difference maker in relationship. But if we are selfish, we're not qualified for marriage.
Hello, and welcome to another amazing episode of TMC, where we are here to help you take your relationship from surviving to thriving. If this is your first time joining us, go ahead and subscribe. Click the like button and turn on your notifications so you'll be notified each time we upload a video. Today on TMC, we have Dauren and Joan Francis with Not Easily Broken.
One thing that I wish I knew or we knew before we get married, that romantic love does not make a marriage work. A lot of times we see couples just get excited about marriage and honeymoon and sex and just going places and having fun and all of that stuff. And we begin to realize that after getting married, that we were not prepared for marriage. The truth be told, that we didn't even go through the premarital counseling process. You know, it was about like 2 days before the marriage where the officiating officer or pastor meet with us and just kind of give us some feedback about the wedding ceremony and about relationship, about marriage. But that was not enough to really help us to navigate through what marriage is really about. And so, you know, we realized that it doesn't take love or romantic love for that matter to make a marriage work. It takes knowledge, wisdom, and understanding to make a marriage work. And it was while we are in marriage that we begin to learn that we were not properly prepared for it. But through the help of God and through my wife and I locking arms together, we decided to keep working at it, and we're doing well so far. Thank God.
So I totally agree with Dauren. You know, you have to come into the marriage knowing something. When you're growing up, you read books and you hear things, but what are the facts? What you have learned coming to that part of your life does not necessarily equate to what the correct thing is. So trusting God and learning from different sources is what we did. And that's why we were able to survive almost 28 years.
Absolutely.
Wow. And that's awesome because I'm thinking about it. So we've been married 23 years and you all 28 years, 5-year difference. And so here's the thing. I remember at 23 years ago when we got married, and definitely, of course, for you all 28 years of getting married, things were a lot different as far as information. We didn't have that luxury to just go onto our cell phones because that didn't exist to be able to do that.
Our culture, you know, you have kids growing up, they're teenagers, there are certain conversations that you were supposed to have. Am I correct?
Yes.
And I don't feel like we got that when we were growing up versus when I look at our kids, our boys, we have so many family meetings. It's unbelievable. They can't say that they don't have the right information.
That's right.
And that's the difference between when we were growing up and the culture that's in the world today. You know, everything is at the fingertip. There's the phones, the internet, you know, everything is just out there. The billboards, on the trains, on the buses, everything is out there, you know, and we're not really talking about sex, but sex sells because it's been advertised everywhere, you know, but it being a part of marriage, you know, that's why I actually mentioned it.
Yes, absolutely. I also believe that it's important for us to begin to realize also that it takes knowledge to make anything work. And unfortunately, when you lack knowledge, you don't know exactly where you're going.
Right.
You know, it's kind of like putting on a blindfold and get in your car and deciding that you're going to drive and go somewhere. You're gonna crash. It's gonna be very disastrous. But what I realized, the advantage of knowing and having the information, you know, one of the things that my wife and I would teach couples all the time is the 5 P's of life. Proper planning prevent poor performance. You will never be ready for what you're not prepared for.
That's right.
And so preparation is the key to anything in life. And we find out that a lot of couples are prepared for the wedding, they're prepared for the honeymoon, but they never really take the time to prepare for the marriage. And the marriage is the journey. The marriage is two people coming together to create a union that will take you somewhere. So what are you using to go to that place? You're using the vehicle that is called marriage. You're interwoven together. You become one flesh. And so what happens in a lot of relationship today is people do not really take the time to unpack a lot of the issues when they're in their season of singleness. And then they come into the marriage with a lot of residue and a lot of issues. And then they unpack those things in the marriage. And instead of them, creating a rhythm, instead of them synchronizing and copulating and fusing together, you have conflicts rather than you have oneness. And so I think the difference between then and now is we had to make mistakes along the way and then correct those mistakes while we are still navigating through marriage. Now, if you decide to get married and you don't have the information, it's not because it's not there. It is because that person is lazy, they're selfish, they're either self-centered, or they like the idea of getting married, but they don't really want to learn how to become a wife or to become a husband. Because I tell folks all the time, it takes only a couple of minutes to get married. So you are a groom for a couple of minutes, you are a bride for a couple of minutes, but it's going to take a while for you to learn exactly how, the kind of responsibility that comes with being a husband and being a wife. And so are you prepared just to be the groom or to be the bride, or are you preparing to be a wife and a husband? And that is where the knowledge, the wisdom, the understanding, and the applicable information take place.
That's good. That's good. And I think, you both said it so beautifully. The difference today, any couple that is even considering marriage has all of this information. They have couples like us, like you guys, like books and all of these. They have marriage seminars and everything so readily available that they can get what they need. And even the transparency from couples that are willing to help and coach other couples, that helps to be prepared for the journeys that they might face. But one thing you said, Dauren, that is definitely profound. It's a journey. It's something that you're going to continue to learn each other along the way. So it's not like even if you watch this podcast, you watch another podcast, you go to a couples retreat or you go to premarital counseling, you're going to get it all right. You're still going to be learning each other along the way, right? So while we're talking about that, let's share with the TMC listeners some lessons that your marriage journey has taught you.
Some of the lessons we have learned is that, for one, that we had to communicate in the marriage. And over the years that we've been married and trying to get things right, I think that communication has become my top priority in my marriage. Because if you're not able to speak with your spouse, speak what's on your mind, speak about what's bothering you, just your thoughts. You come home from work, how was your day? Conversations like that. Sometimes your spouse doesn't even want you to say hello. You come in and be like, how was it? It was fine. And you're gone to the next room. It's reality, right? But we have to learn to talk to each other. We have to learn to say what's on our mind, like I said before, because it is important. And so in marriage, when you start having kids, if you're not communicating with your husband, then your kids are seeing that you're not communicating, then that is also a problem, because they're thinking that is how it's supposed to be. And so they bring that into, their relationship when they get of age. So at some point you have to break that cycle. Also, I think that one of the other things for us is just the continued love. Expressing yourself about, doesn't have to be every day, but as often as you can.
Absolutely.
How much you love each other. You have to keep that spark going, because you don't want to get it to a point where you're bored and then all of a sudden you're heading down the D word lane. You don't want to have a divorce. So you have to express yourself as far as how you feel about your spouse.
I think one of the things we have learned along the way is, even though we are in marriage, we are two different persons. that are in marriage. And
Right.
so we learned that you don't lose yourself in marriage. We've learned that marriage was not designed to make you whole.
That's
You're
right.
already a whole human being coming into marriage. We
Yes.
realized that marriage was not created to make you happy. Happy people should be getting married. I realized that my job is not to change my wife. My job is to love her as she is. And I also learned that you marry 4 people: the person you date, the person you court, the person that you get married to, and the person that they're going to be because of marrying you.
Wow.
And so as you begin to understand that marriage was created by God to give you the opportunity to infuse and to engraft yourself with another human being. And so in order for me to become a better husband, I had to learn how to become a better man.
Yes.
And that's where the challenge came, because I got married young, my wife and I. And so, as I said, we didn't know nothing about life. We didn't know nothing about, how to make a marriage work. And so I had to unpack some of the scars and the wounds that I was dealing with in my life while I was in marriage. And then my wife had to deal with the residue of those problems. And so I had to go to work on my spiritual life. I had to go to work on myself as a man. And as I grow into my role and my responsibility as a man, my masculine role, my energy as a man, and as I begin to become more whole as a man, that's when the residue, or I would say by default, my growth now impact my marriage in a very positive way. And so, these are some of the challenges that we face along the way. And I'm honestly proud to say that I just know how to love this woman of God right next to me, because I've learned how to love me. And because I am tapped into the source of love, it's easy for me to transition and to add value to her life from that perspective. And these are some of the things that we've learned along the way.
And I'm glad you said that about us as individuals, because I think that's very important, in the relationship, to understand. And you mentioned, the love and the love that God gave to us. And it's like we have possession of it and we own it. It's like we have it now. We have it in the palms of our hands. Yes. And in order for you to have access to it, now you're able to give it. It's like you can't give what you don't have. So I love that aspect of the fact of us focusing on ourselves and making sure we're getting love from the right source, so we're able to give love back to our family, back to our spouse, back to our kids. So I love it. I love the way you mentioned that. I think that is so important. And one of the things I'm learning with marriage, and even in my own self earlier on, in our marriage, is every time something went wrong, it was always, all I can see is her. All I can see is what she was not doing right. And it's so hard to really look into ourselves and look into our own souls and say, you know what, maybe it's me. I want you to speak to that individual that may be pointing the finger, not realizing the street pointing right back at them. Maybe it's their fault. We with you. Maybe it's their fault. And maybe just consider, maybe it's you. I want you to speak to that person.
You have to take responsibility for you. It's very key that we understand that. Now, it takes 2 people to get married, and it takes 2 people to build a successful marriage. It takes 2 people to get married, and you only take 1 person to get a divorce. If it takes 2 people to get married and only 1 person to get a divorce, then it only takes 1 person to influence change in the marriage. Now, eventually, the other spouse has to come on board, because it takes 2 people to really make a marriage work. But oftentimes, we don't realize that we have the ability to influence change. And we can only influence change in our marriage based on our changed behavior. And so what I had to learn is, for example, initially, when we got married, I was the one that wanted to go to church every day. And my wife sometimes just wanted us to just take a weekend just to go away. I was the one that always want to read the Bible every single day. And if my wife read a book that is not the Bible, I thought that something was wrong with her spiritually. Can I just testify?
Be honest.
Hello, come on, let's talk about it. Right. And so I begin to realize that, I was not really adding value to her life the way I should. And so instead of her accepting the criticism, but you know what I did? So as I begin to understand how to relate to her, I engage in conversation. I would be like, babe, let's sit down and read the word of God, rather than say, why aren't you reading the word of God? You know, I would lead her into prayer. I would have meaningful conversation about scriptures. And then I begin to realize that she started to receive what I was saying. So a lot of times we often want to just tell our spouse, oh, you're this and you're that, rather than look into ourselves and say to ourselves, how are you doing it? What are some of the ways that you need to change in order to make your spouse feel better about you? My wife is a worshiper. I can honestly say that oh my God, this woman of God is a worshiper. And before, I used to have a complaint and have issues that she doesn't worship enough. I mean, I would tell you stories, but she can talk about it for herself. She would be at work and she would call me and be like, babe, oh my God, the Spirit of God is so heavily on me. And she would go into the bathroom and just pray, and she would just call me. It's just amazing. Sometimes I'm in my sleep and I wake up with this woman of God laying hands on me, or you hear what I'm telling you. And so a lot of times we see our spouse as they are rather than see them as they can be. But in order for us to see them as they can be, we have to also know who we are and exactly what kind of change we want to see in ourselves so that we can influence change in others. If I can also just add to that, the relationship that you have with your spouse, it's really a reflection of the relationship that you have with yourself. You know, I cannot give to my wife what I don't have. And oftentimes that's really the problem. How you talk to yourself, how do you feel about you? And we oftentimes always deflect, you know, especially when we're not really, you know, comfortable or we're not confident in who we are. And so instead of us dealing with the man in the mirror, we always deflect the issue. And so it's really about polishing ourselves. And my wife and I, we always talk about, we're always becoming one. You know, I remember we sat down, I think it was last summer, and in the back of our house, we have a patio in the back, and we were just sitting down, just drinking tea, I believe. And we were just talking, listening to some love music and just kind of gleaming into each other's eyes, you know, what we love folks do. And I remember looking at her and said, babe, I fell in love with so many women lately. And she was like, what the heck are you talking about? You're in love with all these women. I was like, yeah, I found myself just loving all these women. I can't believe it. I'm into that space, into that zone. And I mean, she opened her eyes wide like she was about to throw the tea at me. And, you know, I'm ready to kind of duck from it. You know, I didn't know what she was going to do. And then I was like, time out, baby, time out. Don't get mad. There ain't no side chick. There's none of that stuff going on. I looked at her and I said, you know, I just looked at you and I begin to realize that over the years, I mean, that was 27 years because it was last year summer. I was like, over the 27 years of marriage, I realized that you have evolved in so many different ways as a woman, as a wife. And I have learned to love you in all of those areas, all of those changes, all of those seasons. And she looked at me and was like, wow, that's amazing. I've never thought about it that way. And I was like, yeah. And so I keep loving the different women that you unfold or display all over again. There were moments when I had to modulate, I had to shift because of the season that her life is in. And the same thing goes for me. She had to shift. She had to change the thermostat and probably turn it down a little bit or turn it up. You know, for example, I used to be a red meat eater. I used to eat meat. I don't eat red meat for over what, almost 20 years around? Over 20 years. Initially, it was very difficult because when she asked, babe, what do you want for dinner? I'm like, fish and chicken. And she'd be like, oh God, there we go again. And it's been like that for a while. And she finally got it that, oh, my husband does not eat red meat anymore. So when I'm buying, you know, beef and, you know, steak or goat meat and all that stuff, she's not buying it for me. But in her mind, she thinks she is. And it was a change that she has to adapt to. So that's a change that she has to learn. And that's one of the things about marriage, that you go through different seasons and changes in your life. But it doesn't mean that your spouse is not the same person. They are. But are you learning to love them in that season and through that season, because life and season change. And unfortunately, we become so selfish and self-centered that we think that somebody that you married 25 years ago or 15 years ago or 5 years ago or 3 years ago are the same person. We are evolving, we are changing, and that's why we are always becoming one.
Absolutely.
And I love that because we share the same experience, especially when we talk to people. They'd be like, oh, you've been married 23 years. How in the world are you still with the same woman? And my thing is like, I'm not
the same.
I'm not. This is not the same woman. I mean, she's
Come on.
different. She's better. And it's just so amazing with the work.
Talk about it.
As we continue to work and grow, it gets better and better. And we like, wow.
We do get that all the time, like, especially Dauren. He would come home and tell me, like, guys on the job celebrating the anniversary and talking about it. And guys are like, oh, you've been with the same woman for 27 years. Like, why?
Amazing.
How do you maneuver that? But like you said, we grow and we change and we evolve. We're not necessarily the same two people that got married. I mean,
We're not.
She's somewhere in there, but
yeah, she's always there. But you're an upgraded version of that person.
yeah, exactly.
There you go. Well, absolutely. I love who she has become over the years. The kind of woman that she is, the feminine quality, the maturity. I mean, OMG moment.
That means there wouldn't have been any growth.
Absolutely.
There has to be growth.
There you go. And so it's very important that we do understand that as human beings, we evolve, but we evolve together as one.
Yeah.
You're showing up as a better husband. All of that, you're showing up as a better individual. Then a byproduct of that is that you're going to have a better relationship, and that communication is going to be better. Openness and vulnerability is going to be evident in your relationship, and then you're evolving, they're evolving. You can't get bored because you're constantly learning each other, you're constantly shifting, but you're constantly evolving. You're evolving intellectually, emotionally, all of these ways. So you can't get bored unless one person is growing and the other person is not. Then it's like, wait a minute, because you're left behind, you're stuck out. So if we want to talk to the couple, maybe someone feels that way, what is the first thing that you would advise them to do to get on the right track?
I just want to say that I adore my husband, and he is such a go-getter. He's always been that way from the beginning of our marriage. And I realized the growth in him. And, it's just like one day I woke up. It's like, okay, we're in this marriage together. So how is it God has put him in my life to be the leader, right? Over the house, the home, the kids, and over me as the wife, right? And I saw him growing, and it wasn't like there was space between us, but as far as the growth is concerned, I felt like he was leaving me. So what I found myself doing was reading the Bible more. I was praying more. I was fasting more. I was just like looking for information to help me grow, because I couldn't allow him to be up there and I'm not right behind him.
Come on.
I had to be right behind him.
And I did it in love.
And now he's talking about the way he sees me worship, the way he sees me pray and all this stuff. This is stuff that I've been trying to do for the longest. And one day, I don't know what happened, but it just happened. I was seeking God more, reading the word, just craving for the word of God. And so I find that, we are in a better place, and we do a lot of praying together and reading the word together, even with the kids, when we're all together, and we have our time when we have a family meeting, when before the meeting, we would read a scripture and we would pray. And so it's become a family thing for us. Yeah. So I would advise a young couple or someone who's looking to go into marriage, be certain of what you want, because it's not about the other person so much. Initially, you have to know what you want. Who are you? And what do you want out of life? What do you want of this marriage? Because when you can decide for yourself, and when you can love yourself, even in your singleness before marriage, then you'll be able to share with your husband or that person that God has put in your life.
Absolutely. One of the things that I've learned over the years is I cannot change my wife. It's not my job to change her. Yes. It's my job to love her. Yes. And the moment I realized that that's the only thing that the Lord asks a man to do, to love your wife as Christ loved the church. I had to learn exactly how Christ loved the church. When the Bible said that he that loveth his wife loveth himself, love your wife as your own body, I had to learn about that, which means that she is an extension of who I am. We are one flesh, right? When we become a couple and we consummate the marriage, we are now in a covenant, blood covenant marriage. So my wife and I, we are one. It's two becoming one. It's two individuals living their life out in a marriage as one.
Right.
And so I had to realize and learn exactly how that looks like in a relationship, in a marriage. Now you have people that are married and they don't merge their life together at all. That's a problem. They don't have no bank account. They don't have nothing together. There's nothing that glues them in the marriage. Even sex sometimes is very selfish. Sex is not about the two of them. It's just about them, you know? And so we had to realize that if our marriage is going to work, we have to engraft ourselves. So if she pack a bag and says she's leaving, I'm leaving with her. Y'all hear what I'm telling you?
Yeah.
We are in this together. And if I pack a bag, I know she's gonna be like, where you think you're going? We gonna work
together. I bought the hotel. We going together.
That's what it's
about. Because as we begin to allow ourselves to be used by God and understand the purpose of marriage versus the benefits of marriage, then I begin to realize that we have to learn to love each other unconditionally.
Yes.
And then we realize that unconditional love simply means that you're loving a spouse with a condition that is not necessarily favorable to you in the marriage.
That's right.
And I realize that there's no possible way that I can love my wife unconditionally with her flaws, with the hang-ups, and she loving me with my flaws and my hang-up until we absolutely are immersed in the one who is love. And it's at that particular time that we realize that with the agape love and the eros, the romance, the intimacy, the affection intertwined and interwoven together, it creates something absolutely amazing. Why? Because we now begin to see that God being manifest in our marriage has nothing to do with what I get. It has everything to do with what I give. And that was the difference maker in our life. The Bible said, he that loveth not knoweth not God, because God is love. He is the essence of love, his very nature of love. So I don't love when I take from you. I'm loving you when I give to you. And of course we're expecting reciprocity, but at the same time, we don't love where we get. That's why a man will never protect where he did not invest in. I am an aggressive investor. I am putting everything on you, baby. Oh, you better believe it. I am putting everything on her, because as a man, I know how to protect because I know how to serve. And that's the difference maker in relationship. But if we are selfish, we're not qualified for marriage. And that's one of the problems in marriages today.
That's true.
Yes. Over 23 years of marriage, and I'm listening to you guys, it's evident that it's purpose over benefit, because it's how can I love him? How can I support him? How can I be everything that I'm designed and created to be to him? So it's the purpose of what this union does. The purpose of what this union does, the union you guys have, what it does, because we couldn't even help other people and do what God has called for us to do if we are not remembering that there is a purpose behind this union. It's not about my benefit. Not about you gonna put me in a house, you're gonna buy me a car, you're gonna buy me a Louis. It's not about that. I mean, all those things are great, nothing wrong with having those things, but it's not about what I can get out of it. It's about what I'm giving to it. And ultimately, what I'm giving to it, what he giving to it, brings a purpose to this world that makes the difference. And that's why God intended it, because there's something for it to do. And I love that, because that's what I hear from you guys. We're over here bumping each other and everything, because that's what we hear from you guys, the same thing that we believe about our marriage, that there is a purpose. It wasn't just about Shante and Cedric. It's not just about Dauren and Joan. It's about what is the purpose that God has for this union to make a difference in this earth realm, right? And that is amazing. I'm excited. This is And for everyone that is out there, if you're considering marriage, you're about to be married, you're married, you have to switch that mindset. Dauren, I wrote that down because that's something that we have to get it. It's purpose over benefit. Purpose over benefit, because that purpose benefits all of mankind instead of one individual.
Absolutely.
Before we prepare to leave, you have to tell the TMC listeners about Not Easily Broken. Tell us about Not Easily Broken.
Yes.
Before Not Easily Broken, our ministry was After We Say I Do. That was the name of our ministry, After We Say I Do. And I believe that, a man's wife is his greatest asset. I do believe that, that when God said, he that findeth a wife findeth a good thing and have obtained favor from the Lord, I'm absolutely favorable because she has two daddies. She have her heavenly father that favors me for marrying her. And then she have her biological father, whom they have an excellent relationship, favor me too, because I married his daughter. And so one day I just got a revelation about Not Easily Broken. And I got the revelation in a sense of us doing like webinars and seminars and workshops and stuff like that. I didn't thought about rebranding anything. And I said to my wife, babe, I have this idea about this name, Not Easily Broken, but I did not visualize it with a K. I visualized N-O-T. My wife looked at me and says, why don't you put a K next to it? And I was like, why a K? And she was like, because the knot changed everything.
Yeah.
And right there, something went off in my head, and I was like, oh, that is so dope, babe. That is so dope. But anyway, I didn't know nothing about it. And, long story short, I think it was 2018, babe, that the Spirit of the Lord reminded me about that name again. And I went on Google, I searched, I didn't see anything. I went on GoDaddy.com, searched for the domain name. It was available. I purchased it. And I still didn't do anything about it. And then I think it was the ending of 2018, the Spirit of the Lord reminded me about it again. And then I went to my wife and I said, babe, I think it's time for us to rebrand our name, rebrand what we're doing, and change our name from After We Say I Do to Not Easily Broken. And she was like, but babe, this has been over 4 years of ministry. I'm not sure your social media presence and followers, and they're going to take to the name change. And it was like, this is what God wants us to do. And so I don't do anything without consulting my wife. And I said, babe, I think it is the right thing to do. And so we actually have a knot to show you guys exactly how Not Easily Broken was birthed. So when I got the knot, I started to do a research and found out about a fisherman's knot. And then I realized that in a wedding ceremony, so a lot of times they do the unity candle and the unity sand, but they also tie a knot in some ceremony. They do the tying of the knot, where they have two knots that is joined together. And as you know, Ecclesiastes chapter 4 and verse 12 says that a cord of three strand is not easily broken. So the K is just a play with words, if you know what I'm saying.
Beautiful. I love
So yes, so the blue and the white represent the wife, and the black knot represent the husband. So it's two cards actually coming together. So the gap is the distance between the two knots. This is where the problem is, because the gap can be a lot of challenges that you're going through with your marriage. The gap is a lot of issues that you're going through. It can be lack of communication, the lack of intimacy, the lack of trust, infidelity, in-laws problem, all kind of different things create the gap. But when the knot is stronger, when the two become one, the knot allows you to be stronger. You are unbreakable. So when the two knot meets together, it doesn't matter what is going on. This, my friend, is where the power is in the marriage. It's not the fact that you're married. Is the fact that the two of you have become one. And when you are interwoven together, when you put God as a third strand in that knot, and you intertwine God in the foundation of your marriage, baby, you are not easily broken. And that's how the ministry got started. And we rebranded everything, and we went on social media. We lost a couple of followers because they didn't understand the concept of the knot. But then eventually it just took it started to resonate with people, the play of the words, and then they begin to realize how strong the knot needs to be, and who is the third, card in that knot and in that rope and whatever it is. And so we just launch out by faith, and we have mentored people all over the world. I mean, we have clients and people have reached out to us for marriage counseling and mentorship all over. I mean, our calendar is just crazy right now. And I want to thank God for this amazing, wonderful, beautiful, gorgeous, fine, attractive, fantastic.
Thank you.
I listen, I celebrate my wife. Y'all got to just help me, because I celebrate her. And she's amazing, man. I'm telling you, she is a fire. I mean, she gives me wings to fly. And I honestly say that it's through her vision and through her aspiration that helps me to be able to birth this ministry, because initially I didn't see the name as something that powerful, but every time that I say it, it makes more sense. And she was like, I'm telling you, babe, the knot makes the difference. And thank you. It does.
And I just have to add that it had to be God. I'm telling you, I talked about before how I was just in the word and just praying all the time. It had to be God, because he just said it to me, and right away out of nowhere, I don't, like on my own, I don't think I thought that up.
Yep.
It just came out of my mouth like, and I'm like, what did I just say? And then it made so much sense, because I didn't understand why I said it, but it just made sense.
Yes.
And I thought it had to be God. Praise God for that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So we are on social media, on Facebook, on Instagram,
YouTube.
and YouTube as Not Easily Broken. That's where you can find us, and we are definitely helping people to strengthen their marriage knot.
On behalf of the TMC family, we want to thank you all both so very much for taking time out of your busy schedule and adding value to us all.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, and some more thank you.
If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, go ahead and subscribe. Click the like button and turn on your notifications so you'll be notified each time we upload a video. And if you're listening on iTunes, rate the podcast and leave a review. That helps us get the word out. We want to invite you to head on over to our leadership podcast, Lead to Greatness, where my husband is interviewing entrepreneurs and great leaders from all around the world every week.
So we want to thank you for joining us today on TMC. Looking forward to hanging out with you again on next week as we continue to help you take your relationship from surviving to thriving. Bye. See you next week.